Home Trails podcast presented by me, Ultra Running Sam. Now, this podcast is part of the Home Trails media entity that encompasses our Home Trails documentaries. You may have seen them on YouTube, so where we interview famous ultra runners from around the world and in the UK at the moment. We film them on the trail and in the home, obviously, Home Trails. Get those insights into their training, big races they've done, and then just their background information. Try and dig a bit deeper into what motivates them to go and do these amazing things that they do. Also part of Home Trails is new for this year is our live podcast coming from big races. You may have seen us at the Spine Race in January. We were there doing our thing all week. Later on in the summer, we will be at the Lap in the Lake District, and then keep your eyes peeled for other races where we'll be popping up and doing media coverage for some big races, hopefully. So obviously we have a podcast now, so we'll keep doing this every week, keep churning out the podcasts with famous runners and people in the industry, anyone that we can get on that we feel that you might be interested in related to trail running and ultra running. So on with our guest. Okay, so welcome back to the Home Trails podcast with me, Ultra Running Sam. So been away for a little bit, so yeah, I'll just do a little bit of housekeeping to catch you up. So last podcast, since then I've been away with the family. It's half term and everything, so we went away camping up to Yorkshire. Got the kids up Pen y Ghent, a bit windy, but that's standard for that area. Went out for a bit of a paddle on one of the big lakes up there. Had an interesting interaction with the farmer that owns that lake, who's a bit grumpy. But we'll save that for the Google reviews. Yeah, and then obviously that's why we've had a bit of a break in podcasting. So I'd got a couple of things lined up, but not everything's worked out. So today we're talking to Scott Jenkins about the Monster Arizona Monster 300. Get some feedback from a Brit who's done it. Find out what actually went on at that controversial race. We'll figure out what the truth is in all the stories, but we'll get to that. Just while we're talking about that race, Dan Davis, you know who you are, pulled me up on the fact that I said that PJ Mortimer, who won that race, I said he ran for a Pravia, and it's obviously not a Pravia. I don't know why I said a Pravia. It's Air Viper. That's me not reading things properly, even though I've heard that name so many times. And I've been speaking to Jamil Curry about getting him on the podcast, and he'll be coming on the podcast soon. So I best get the pronunciation of his race company right. Air Viper, not a Pravia. I don't know where that came from. But anyway, right. Through the magic of podcasting, I'll pause, and then we'll be back with Scott Jenkins shortly. Actually, cancel that for a second. So one more thing that and it's actually quite a big thing that I need to tell you about. So in the next month and a half, something like that, maybe June, I've got the opportunity to go and do a Home Trails episode in the US with a very famous ultra runner. I can't really say too much about who it is, but it's basically somebody who has been a bit quiet recently. You probably might be able to figure it out from that. And I'm hoping that they don't do any other interviews because they kind of promised me that I could do this, and this would be their way of sort of talking for the first time since last year. So I don't know whether it's going to happen or whether this ultra running question will do other podcasts or interviews in between time. I hope that they don't, but there's a possibility that I might be putting together a GoFundMe to basically pay for this trip to go out there, because as much as I'd love to just put it on a credit card and pay for it myself, I've just bought a house and funds are short with a family. So I might use the power of the podcast to sort of put it out there to people if they think that they could sort of contribute towards this. And if they did, then I would, even if people just gave a fiver, I would make sure that they would get their name in the credits for the episode. So I'll do a credit roll at the end, which I don't normally do on the episodes. I just do a sponsor at the start, but I would do a full credit roll at the end, and I would get everybody's names on there. And if you were somebody who donated a lot of money, then you might even end up in the pre-roll. So before as the episode starts, you might even get a credit there if it was a big enough donation. So just keep your eyes peeled for that. I'll let you know if it goes live, but hopefully that would be something that people could support. Yeah, we'll see if it happens, but okay, keep your eyes peeled for that. Right, okay, I'll pause again and we'll have Scott with us. Okay, we are re-recording. So, officially, welcome to the Home Trails podcast. Returning guest Scott Jenkins.
Ah, Sam, good morning. Good afternoon. A pleasure
Yeah,
to be back. Thank you for having me on again, mate.
yeah. So I was having a look, and it was February 2024 we last had you on, and that was for obviously you were doing the triple. You'd completed the triple crown, hadn't you, of 200? So the
Yeah,
Tahoe, Bigfoot, and Moab, and you were fifth place in that triple crown, weren't you? So that's that's what you were up to the last time we spoke. But
yeah.
obviously you've been a busy man. I know we're obviously going to talk about the Arizona Monster, but I just thought I wanted to catch up with you and just find out, how you've been and what you've been up to. Because the last time we spoke, you were still back in Blighty, but now you're not, are you? You're somewhere else. You've relocated.
I've relocated. Yeah, you shipped me off. So I am living in New Jersey now in the US. So yeah, it took a little while to adjust, to be honest with you, Sam. Like, because it's, I think when that kind of opportunity comes around, it's really exciting. But until you actually go through it, you don't realize the amount of bureaucracy, admin, all of that stuff that needs to happen. And then that kind of beats you down a little bit. I came over at the beginning, no, the end of September, I beg your pardon, and I had the opportunity to run the 200-mile race up in the Canadian Rockies called the Divide 200. So I came over, ran the Divide 200, came back from that, was slowly recovering, and then, in all honesty, like struggled to find my running mojo again. Everything seemed quite far away in terms of next races, and the winter was kind of coming in. And honestly, I didn't know where the trails were, didn't know, what roads I could kind of run down. There's no sidewalk where we are. It's very sidewalk pavement. Forgive me, British listeners. Pavement. There's no pavement where we are. So I found myself kind of bitting together these runs that weren't great quality. And it's not like a X Factor sad song, like, trying to pull on the heartstrings. It's just a case of I generally struggled to find that consistency and rhythm to my training, which I had at home. So fast forward a couple of months, and I went down to a race called the Cold War 100K in Arizona for a bit of a tune-up, and I certainly had a tune-up, but I didn't really put much prep in. I think my longest run was like 10 miles before the race, and whilst I was kind of semi enjoying it, I wasn't really enjoying it. I wasn't really enjoying it because I'd been a bit complacent with my training and put the work in. Ended up my my coach Jeff, he rolled his ankle, and that just gave me the excuse to kind of go, yeah, let's just knock it on the head. And I called it a day at 60K, and we went off to the bar and had a couple of beers. But the good thing was it was a bit of an intervention from Jeff and my wife to go, you need to get back on the horse and start doing some proper training again. So from that point onwards, I've made obviously a concerted effort to just make sure that I put in all the work that I could in the lead up to the last race.
Yeah, nice one. Just quickly, you're echoing when you're speaking, so I don't know what's causing that. Whether that's is it your
Hmm.
headphones or is it volume on your so you like echoing like there's another. It was like you'd got when you've got another connection on and you hear it almost echoing off that. I don't know what it.
Let's sorry about that. Let me try
That's all
this
right. Yeah.
without the headphones.
No, I can't hear you. Can't hear you. Still can't hear you. Is it the mic on them? Is it? Still can't hear you. Just pause a Right, we're back after a technical glitch, but I think we're all sorted now. So, yeah, Scott, you were sort of saying about your training that you'd kind of needed a bit of a motivation and everything to start training again, and obviously that's where the monster comes in. But um, you obviously we talked briefly spoke about your move and everything. What do you mind me asking, like why you moved to the US? Was this something to do with work, or was it something that you'd always wanted to do?
Yeah, no worries at all. And thanks for asking the question. So I think it's something that me and my wife had always wanted to do. And she was lucky enough to be approached for a role that was coming up in April last year. So she applied for it and was successful in getting it. And then, yeah, basically she was like, unless you want a divorce, you better come with me to America. So cue a bit of panic as I looked for the kind of next step in my career, and I was very fortunate that a role came up and I was able to get it. And I think my wife left at the beginning of August to move over, and I shortly moved after, probably about 4 weeks later. But up until that point, it was only the week that she was leaving that I got offered my job. So I could have been stuck indefinitely. So very, very fortunate to be here. Um, it's New Jersey probably gets for those of your listeners that have ever been to New York, they may have flown into Newark Airport or they've watched The Sopranos. It kind of gets this reputation as a kind of built up state. And kind of forgotten about a little bit in terms of visitors to the US, but actually where we are in the kind of southern central area, we're about 45 minutes from Philly, and there's just access to like beautiful trails. There's an incredible trail next to the Delaware River, which is awesome. And then there's loads of like just trails going off into random places. And honestly, Sam, like in the whole of my training block for the Monster, I saw 3 runners the whole time.
Wow.
They call it the Garden State, and certainly this area is all kind of rolling green hills, little bits of forests here and there. So actually, in terms of training, having access now to hills that I didn't really have access to in London unless it was the weekend I was driving down to Surrey
Mm.
or down to the hills on the South Downs. Now I have them at the end of my street, which is, I think, so beneficial for my training, both in terms of going up, but also going down, right? So
Mm.
that's access that I haven't had previously. And I think it helped a lot in the build up to the Monster for sure.
Am I right in thinking that the sort of East Coast, they call it like East Coast, Beast Coast, don't they? Like the trails on the East Coast are more gnarly than like the West Coast sort of counterpart, which is all like buffed out like forest roads and stuff. Whereas trails on the East Coast are more like trails that we're kind of used to.
Absolutely. So Beast Coast is very accurate. So I only had the opportunity in the middle of October to go up and have a little look at the Appalachian Trail, which is about an hour north from here. So I will, now the weather's starting to get nicer, go and spend some time on the AT this summer, which
Mm.
will be cool. Not doing anything big, just training runs just to check it out. But absolutely, to your point, it's a lot of rock and route, which is kind of my nemesis when it comes to ultra running. As many ultra runners could probably attest to, you spend a
Yeah.
lot of time kicking roots and rocks, and actually being able to train on that kind of terrain regularly, I think, can only help me as a runner. But that said, it is quite similar to what we would experience in the UK in terms of just tree roots everywhere and rocks everywhere. And the only kind of thing that I would say is that the mud isn't existent. There's nothing like UK mud, and everyone knows what that's like to kind of wade through.
Yeah.
However, the other kind of flip side of that is that when I was training for the Monster, weather conditions. One of my training runs, Sam, was at minus 22 degrees Celsius, and it was on road, and it was just a sufferfest. And I remember like running up and down this hill, doing hill repeats. It's not far; it's just the end of the street. But It was dark. It was like, a weeknight, and I'm kind of running on the left-hand side of the road towards the traffic. So at least I can see the end coming if it hits me. And on the left-hand side of the road, there's just a massive snowbank. And on the right-hand side was the kind of traffic coming towards me. And I'm just like, oh man, like this has to build some mental calluses, and
Yeah,
hopefully one day it'll all pay off. So yeah, once I knuckled down and got to it in January, the training was pretty good, to be fair.
yeah, awesome. Yeah, it's good that you've I suppose there'd be as an ultra runner, as a trail runner, there'd be nothing worse than sort of relocating to somewhere because you've got to because that's the way that your life has gone, and then it not being quite what you expected as far as like trails and having access to stuff. So the fact that you're only like an hour-ish from the Appalachian Trail, that surely that must be like a bit of a temptation to think about, when you hear about like John Kelly talking about going for the record and stuff like that. Has that crossed your mind? It must have surely crossed your mind.
It has. It absolutely has. Especially I think John put a post up like a couple of days ago of photos of the AT, and I was like, oh, not far away now. But then, yeah, it's honestly trying to find the time as well. Like the new
Yeah.
job is super exciting, but like a lot of travel, very busy as well. Which all sound like excuses to avoid the AT, but I promise you they're not. It's just like if
Well,
I'm
it's a
going to
big
do that, I
investment
have
in
to
time, isn't it? That to do that,
100%.
yeah, it's not just just to go and do that on a limb, do you? You've got to
No,
prepare for it for a long time, and then it's a big chunky life, isn't it, to go and do it?
definitely, definitely. And I think the other thing is there's so many races out here that I would love to do as well. So it's almost kind of trying to find the time to fit some of those in as well. I was looking at one the other day. I think it's down in Virginia, the Grindstone by
Oh yeah,
UTMB, which was in September. I got Kodiak 100 in October. There's also like these one day or couple of day things that I would love to go and do. So like I've always wanted to run hard rock. So
yeah,
obviously it's ridiculously difficult to get into. But then one of my friends mentioned to me, "Oh, why don't we do a soft rock? Go and
mm,
do like 4 sections over 4 days." And that's kind of really appealing to me actually, because go out, have a tough day in the mountains, finish in town,
yeah,
have a beer, talk about the day on the trail, and then that next day get up and do that. And I think being focused on doing all of these races over the time is fantastic, but also like stopping to enjoy some of that venture by doing like those couple of day events, like the Wonderland Trail in Mount
mm,
Rainier, like meant to be absolutely stunning. I think it's about
yeah.
86 miles, and I'd love to go and do that. And it's like, oh, I want to do it, but then it means that I don't get any access to like, oh, here's your stamp for applying for the Western States lottery next year. So it's trying to fit it all in, I guess, at the end of the day.
Because you absolutely love those big American races anyway, don't you? So do you feel like you're sort of like a kid in a sweet shop now, like with you relocating and you're so much closer to all these races that you want to do? And I don't blame you because I would be the same. If I moved to the States, I'd be like, right, here's my list of races that I've heard of and I want to do, and then tick them off one by one. Is that the plan?
Yeah, pretty much, pretty much. The lotteries are super competitive to get into over here, aren't they? That's the only other thing. Actually, and this is a good point, Sam, you just made it. I need to probably create a calendar of like when the lotteries are and when the races are, and make sure I don't miss anything. I don't seem to have much luck when it comes to lotteries. So didn't get into Western, didn't get into Hard Rock, didn't get into High Lonesome. I'm like, oh God, what am I going to do instead? So this is where the soft rock idea came from. But then I'm thinking, okay, what are those races that I want to do, and what are the ones that I don't know about? So I was chatting to one of my friends, Mosey Smith, he's a Badwater finisher as well, fantastic runner. And he texted me about something yesterday, and I actually haven't looked it up yet. It's called the Pine to Palm 100
Oh,
miler. So I
yeah,
need
I've
to,
heard of that.
yeah,
Yeah. Mm.
I kind of heard of it, but I don't know
Don't
enough
know the
about it
details.
to know what it is. But I'm like, oh, that sounds interesting, something different. Um, yeah, so there's so much I want to do. I was lucky in the build up to the Monster that I was in San Diego for work, so I was maybe able to kind of drive 7 hours, which is pretty much the length of the UK, over to Arizona, and I got to run rim to rim to rim, which is
Amazing.
also something that I'd always want to
Yeah.
do with my coach Jeff and one of his
Yeah.
assistant coaches Tyler. And that was just such an epic day out, and it just made me realize that actually I want to do some more of those little adventures like Soft Rock or Wonderland Trail. So many things to do. So yeah, kid in the sweet shop or candy shop is probably quite accurate, I would say.
Yeah. Amazing. Right, so let's talk about the monster then. So this I don't know if it's you've sort of had the same sort of impression because you did the race, but it seemed like it caused like a bit of controversy sort of in the ultra running world with lots of memes going around about buckets and things like that. So I just wanted to sort of get your take on the race and what it was actually like to do the race, because it's easy for people to talk on the internet about a race and say they did this right, they did this wrong. But what you actually did the race, so what's your view on how the race went for you personally, and how you sort of saw it as from an organization sort of standpoint?
I appreciate you asking that question, Sam. And I have seen some of the comments and sensationalist clickbait that have certainly been put out there, and I feel quite saddened by it. Actually, I feel it feels unholy, like it just wasn't necessary at all. I just think that I've experienced all of the destination trail races, and I've always had a fantastic adventure. And I'm not just saying it, like I generally have. Like these have been life-changing adventures, not just for me, but for other runners as well. I've learned so much about myself from just being out there. And not only that, being able to raise a lot of money for charity as well. And if it weren't for companies like Destination Trail and like what Candice has done in terms of creating these adventures, all of that wouldn't exist. So I feel very grateful to have these experiences. And then, like in terms of the race itself, the monster, I think for an inaugural year of a 300-mile race, like minor teething problems, yeah, sure, but like every race has that when they have an inaugural year. Like, and I just feel like obviously something set it alight, and then people were just kind of wading in, and actually some of the comments I thought were just wholly unprofessional and wholly unfair towards Candice, towards the Destination Trail organization, but also towards the volunteers who are doing their absolute utmost to make it a fantastic experience. So, in summary, I feel like I had a fantastic adventure. I got to run 300 miles across Arizona, saw some incredible scenery, and learned some really, really good lessons about ultra running and myself as well at the same time. And you think about other races. So, I remember when Cocodona, as an example,
Mm.
was in its inaugural year, and everyone was like, "Oh my God, 250 miles and." That 30-mile section at the beginning, there was no water and the food was terrible, and they should know better, this, that, and the other. I mean, we're ultra runners at the end of the day. And I think James Elson once said it like, we should prepare for these races like we're not going to have access to aid stations and that kind of thing. And that's part of ultra running, is that you deal with obstacles and challenges. And honestly, like I don't think I had any obstacles or challenges related to race organization. Any obstacles I came across were down to me pretty much.
Mm.
Um, so I just think that it was wholly unfair, and people were just kind of armchair critiquing things from whatever part of the internet or whatever rock they were hiding under. And actually, when you're out there living it, it's a different experience completely. So hats off to Destination Trail and the team for an epic adventure in its first year. I'm sure they'll learn some stuff, and I'm sure they'll move forward from it.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, well said. Yeah, you can't expect any race for the first time to go smoothly, can you? And so I talked about it on my podcast, and I was sort of going through the comments about people saying about this, like having to poop in a bucket and stuff, and there was obviously a lot of like memes and stuff going around about that. And my take on it was that, as an ultra runner, pooing in a bucket is kind of like on more on the luxury end of things, isn't it?
What's the problem with that? It is. I mean, what are people wanting? Are they wanting like one of those toilets that plays your music and wipes it for you? I just don't understand that. Like,
Yeah,
I've certainly had worse bowel movements at
yeah,
races. Many spring to
yeah,
mind, and I again, like Sam, great example. But like, here's another one. So I climb a 9,000 foot mountain, one of the highest in Arizona. I go up there all night, and I come to an aid station on the top of the mountain, and they're like, "Hey, good morning. Do you want a coffee? Do you want pancakes? Do you want a grilled cheese?" I mean, come on. It's a 9,000 foot mountain. That's literally nearly double the height of Ben Nevis, the highest
yeah,
mountain in the UK. And we're getting served this amazing food. So, like, for people to go in on the volunteers and go in on the race org, I just think it's so unfair. Like,
yeah,
people giving up their time to help us to have an incredible adventure, just utter madness. And another thing that made me chuckle was that I went back the day after I finished the race to the last aid station to just to give my good friend Lucia Leonard a bit of motivation going into that last section, just see if she needed anything. And I remember distinctly recalling a group of nameless runners who I don't know who they were, but they were sat around the kind of the aid station tent, and they were talking about, well, it's quite hot, so we'll just wait till the sun goes down and then we'll make our move. It's 10 o'clock in the morning. I'm like, you're going to wait all day just to do the last 16 miles. And you're thinking to yourself, I'm not criticizing, but I'm like, you could just walk it. You could be walking it
yeah.
and you could be done
Quicker.
before the sun goes down. It's just, I guess sometimes in ultra running, we can be guilty of like, it's too hot, it's too cold, and the porridge is never quite right. I mean, this is a race in Arizona in the heat, in the sun, in the desert. We were getting what we signed up for, which was an epic adventure and challenging too. And that's what it was.
Mm. Yeah, it's true, isn't it? It sort of baffled me the level of sort of, you know, hatred.
Vitriol.
Yeah, vitriol, yeah, towards. But then I suppose that's the kind of world we live in now, isn't it? That people will jump on something quickly, and yeah, like you say, armchair critics. But it just the whole thing about the like pooping in a bucket and stuff I found hilarious because I was thinking, I've done a few of the spine races, and you're expected to like dig a hole in the floor in the ground with a poo shovel and do a poo and cover it up, and the idea of like pooing in the bucket just sounds quite good compared to that. So yeah, I think
Well, Sam, I'll give you one of my experiences, right? So running across Death Valley, doing a kind of independent effort, me and my brother, and I had to dig aforementioned hole in a desert sand at the side of the road, and I remember distinctly trying to get up after 110 miles, not easy thing to do, having a bit of a wobble, falling back into aforementioned hole, and then dealing with some chafing that was absolutely eye-watering for another 25 miles.
oh,
Now,
wow. Mm.
the thought of pooping in a bucket compared to that is, as you rightly said before, slightly luxurious. So what are we complaining about?
Amazing. Um, so as far as your sort of, you've built up, like quite, like a good CV of these big long ultras now. So how does it sort of rate then the monster compared to the other big 200 plus milers that you've done?
I kind of go back and forth on this a little bit, trying to figure out where it rates in terms of difficulty, in terms of scenery. I think all of them are slightly unique in different ways. Moab is my unashamedly my favorite race. I just think the diversity of scenery is unparalleled anywhere. You've got mountains, canyons, desert, everything. Um, I think probably the Divide 200 is, well, not even probably, definitely the most difficult race that I've done. Very, very challenging, 47,000 feet of elevation up and down. And the climbs aren't your typical switchbacks. It's proper Canadian outdoors, like up and
Mm.
straight down. And that's all it is for 200 miles. And also you've got the impending threat of apex predators, and you can hear packs
Yeah.
of wolves and
Wow.
grizzly bears scat everywhere, which is very unnerving, I must say,
Yeah.
but also makes for an epic adventure. And then the Monster, just the sheer distance of it, 300 miles, is it's quite hard to comprehend, actually. And I just think that it's an incredible adventure. I guess it would be, in a way, like almost like a flip reverse of Spine, and the winter Spine. I mean, that you're dealing with extreme kind of temperatures and weather in the winter Spine. Obviously, you know that very well. You've run it. I haven't. But in the Monster, it's 300 miles on the other end of the spectrum. 20-mile sections with like 3.8 liters of water on, and actually preparing appropriately and making sure you have the right desert wear to be able to go through those miles is incredibly important, which is why, you know, people get dehydrated, make those mistakes, especially in an inaugural year when, you know, it's uncharted territory. So it's definitely up there. I I mean, I've got a soft spot for Bigfoot as well. I've done Bigfoot kind of 3 times as well. So I think it's just an epic, unique venture. And honestly, like because it's so long, and I don't know whether you've experienced this, I struggle to piece it all back together at the moment in terms of like what did the course look like. I have these little flashbacks, like
Mm.
post-traumatic stress a little bit, but it's an epic adventure that I'd highly recommend for sure.
Yeah, what? How do you sort of fare with we probably talked about this before, but like sort of sleep deprivation and the sleep monsters and stuff like that. How does that sort of affect you on? Because obviously, you know, in the UK, if you're going through the night, you've got to face the cold and the, you know, trying to keep moving so that you don't get cold and stuff. Well, obviously, that's not the issue with a hot race, is it?
No, and full transparency again, I've got the sleep strategy wrong on many occasions. Not least like the divide last year was another example where it didn't go perfectly on the sleep side. I still managed to finish in 14th, but I probably could have pushed for the top 10 if I got my sleep right. I spent the last afternoon in a kind of state of deja vu where I was convinced that, you know, I'm going up these really remote Rocky Mountain climbs. And I just remember thinking, oh, I've been here before. I'm going to go left. I'm going to go right. And when that would happen, it would just throw me off. And I got to the last aid station. I was really in this state of heightened paranoia where I was kind of scared and I was actually crying, which is seems ridiculous now talking to you on a podcast about it, but I felt really unnerved. And you add like I say, the wildlife on top, and it makes for a scary experience. And one thing I was conscious of with the Monster was that I wanted to go out and be very conservative in the first couple of days and execute on our plan that I developed with Jeff, with Abby, my crew, Jake and Tina. And then B, I really wanted to nail the sleep strategy and get it right this time. When you've made so many different errors in sleeps over the years, eventually something was due to go right or overdue to go right. And personally, I feel like this time, like everything just went to plan, managed to stick to the plan. And I think a big part of that in these really long distances is actually getting the sleep right so that you're not too tired, that you start making those mistakes that, you know, cause those problems, I suppose.
Because this, I mean, the science is still kind of out there, isn't it? There's no real sort of like, there's no line drawn under it as far as what works for everybody. It's kind of, you've got to kind of figure it out for yourself, haven't you? So did you sort of go with what you'd learned in previous long races, and then it's taken you all this time to kind of figure out what works for you then?
Just tweaked it a little bit. Yeah, I just overcooked it in the divide. I just pushed too hard without stopping. And then with this one, it was a case, and I think you're right, everyone's personal on it. You know, Courtney says she can get through in like what 5 minute nap or something like that. I can't do that. And obviously I'm not in the same class, but still, like I think it's a case of figuring out what works best for you, because even if it's an hour every night, which it was for me, it still meant that that would pay off over a 24-hour period. So most of my sleeps, I did 5 hours of sleep, and most of them were kind of 1 hour blocks. I did 2 trail naps, both of which were a bit chilly, but those were 20-minute naps. And both times I put my headphones in, I rang my wife beforehand and was like, call me in 20 minutes because I might not want to get up and move again. So that worked pretty well. But I found like an hour a night is a sweet spot for me to be able to move efficiently, and not stumble into that sleep deficit, which is a problem. I also slept on the first night. I did a trail nap for, I think it was about 20 to 30 minutes, because I didn't want to get into deficit. And me and Jeff Browning, my coach, talked about this before the race. Don't get into deficit. Much better to just bank like 30 minutes and trick your body into thinking it's having had a good rest when you've got another 4 nights of running to do, kind of thing.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? The sort of different ways that you can approach it. I know from like talking to people that have, done big stuff over here that, like with the, I don't want to keep going on about the spine, but I always do. People that have people that have changed their approach, that it always used to be going as little sleep as possible, but it's kind of starting to go the other way now, where people are starting to think more proactively about sort of banking sleep before it gets to that point. So, people thinking about trying to sleep in the first sort of 24 hours rather than waiting like because it used to be, oh, you always go through the first night without sleep. That's like a given, and then you don't sleep until the following night. But people
Yeah,
are starting to kind of realize that you can probably go a bit quicker if you bank it a bit. So
bank it.
yeah, so if those sort of hour that you were getting every night, is that sort of an hour of getting yourself, were you in a checkpoint, were you on the trail, did you sort of plan it so that you would be in a comfy place to be able to get that, or was it just literally just laying down on the floor and just giving yourself an hour on your watch? How did it work?
It was a bit of a mixture, to be honest, Sam. So like the first night was, it was a case of sleeping on the trail, because I didn't have access to a crew point to be able to do it. And then the second night was a good hour in the back of the car. I think the third night was an hour. Oh, this was a luxury. This was a luxury. So it was an aid station at In-N-Out Burger, in just north of Tucson.
Amazing.
As you can imagine, I was pretty feral in terms of eating the burgers and milkshakes, slamming them all down. And I had an hour. It was about, I think it was about 8 till 9 p.m. And I just remember distinctly, to your point, because I kind of banked that sleep. I was now facing like 38 miles on bike path through Tucson. I just remember kind of waking up, and Abby and Tina were like, just to let you know, there's quite a few people out on the path already. I was like, well, that's fantastic, but like I needed that sleep. I'm glad we did it, and I like kind of just jogged over to the In-N-Out Burger at like mile whatever it was, like 170. I remember coming out and thinking, I feel like my legs are feeling really good. I think I can get after this section now. And actually, the sleep really helped me there, because then I came out and was able to kind of really efficiently move. And you can see like on my Strava, like 10, 11, 12 minute miles consistently, for kind of 38-mile period until
Yeah,
the
yeah.
next day when the sun came up, really. And that helped me to move up the leaderboard a lot. And then during the rest of the race, I think there was, God, I can't even remember how many nights it was out there, but it was 5 hours total. And the last night of the race, I kind of slept on the trail, which wasn't ideal. But again, there was a 60-mile section, 60, that is, from 220 to 280, with no crew access, no. Personally, I didn't have any paces, so when you're that deep in the hole, I just had to get some sleep on the side of the trail, and then it definitely helped me the next day to move more efficiently again. So getting the sleep right, I think, is just so important in these super long efforts, mate, for sure. And you know that from spine, right? It's a must, I think.
Yeah. It's crazy when you start talking about gaps between checkpoints being like 60 miles, that it's hard to, I mean, even for us that have been ultra running for a long time, you still think flipping at 60 miles between checkpoints, but the average person would like the you wouldn't they wouldn't be even able to sort of comprehend that you could sort of go that far between checkpoints. Did you have any sort of, when you looked at the course beforehand, and you could see where the checkpoints were, had you sort of made a plan in your head about where you would be at certain points, and worrying about, the potential of going through the night in a section that you didn't want to be going through the night in, stuff like that? Or is it just sort of because it was a new race, you just kind of just had to sort of go for it and see what happened?
Yeah, the pacing thing and like going through the night on your own, all those things with the checkpoints. Initially, I really wanted to have paces for the race, just because that's my experience in the past, and I obviously find that very helpful. And as it got closer, I realised that actually, and rightly so, like it's a big ask of people to give up their time to come and help you for like 5 days running through the desert, basically babysitting a human adult as they kind of run shuffle their way through these landscapes. And I kind of resigned myself to the fact, like probably a month before the race, I'm gonna run this race pretty much the entirety of it on my own, and that's okay. Like, and actually, arguably, my previous best performance was, I think, 14th at Moab in 2021 and in 77 hours. And I was like, actually, misery loves company. And if I'm really hot, I would love to whinge and moan about how hot it is. And same thing at night when it's cold, but nobody can hear you scream in the middle of nowhere on your own. So I just kind of put my headphones in a lot more than I normally would, and just got my head down and put the work in. And I was chatting to somebody the other day, and I just kind of, I for some reason, these words stuck in my head. And it was an interview with Alan Wynne Jones. They asked him, they said to Alan Wynne, how have you stayed at the top of your game for so long? And he just turned and did that kind of Martin Johnson, Alan Wynne thing where they're just hard workers. And he just went, I was always hungry for the work. And I just kept thinking, I've got to be hungry for the work, got to be hungry for these miles and put it in. And that 60-mile section, I slept in the car at Gabe Zimmerman, which is mile 220. And I again, like, woke up and took a look around. I thought, oh, there's not that many other runners here. And that's probably the first or second time in the race where I was like, there's not that many people around, which means that I must be doing all right. But I don't want to know where I am. I just want to get out, work my way. So I think it was a 10-mile section, then like maybe, I can't remember, 20, 22, whatever it was, that added up to 60. Any runners that I saw, most of them had like paces with them, but I didn't. And I was just like, I'm just going to put my head down, work all night as hard as I possibly can, and go from there. And I remember the sun. So I remember sleeping at one aid station for like 20 minutes, and it was freezing cold just because, yeah, it's the middle of the night and the desert's going to be cold. And I kind of groggily got back to my feet. I thought, oh, I could do another 20 minutes. And then I thought, nah, it'll be the same situation in 20 minutes time. Let's just get going, get moving. Started moving from there and hiking, power hiking till pretty much just before dawn. I was starting to catch a few more folks, and sun came up, felt really good, reinvigorated, and pushed on towards Apache Springs. And another kind of thing that was like it was like an oasis really that really helped was there's a place called Kentucky Camp, and basically it's on the AZT, which a lot of this race is on the AZT. And they had like a cold water tap outside, and I was kind of flapping around like a dog on a hot day in a riverbed, like just covering myself with water. And again, like, just reinvigorated me, got me through to Apache Springs. And then I think, looking back, there's a couple of cruxes in the race. Like Mount Lemon's a big climb, takes a long time, and it's a very difficult descent. But this one, like Apache Springs to Casablanca, which is the like penultimate stage of the race, it so deep in a race, like to have to run, or get to run, I should say, because we do get to do these things, we choose to do them. A 22-mile section, no access to water, which meant I was carrying like 3.7, 3.8 liters on my back. It's now 10 a.m. The sun's fully up, and I'm thinking, we're going to be out here for quite some time. It's going to be a tough day. Just settle in and take it step by step. And I left that aid station. There were kind of two runners in and around me, both of them really great people, Lance and Anne Tisdale, who ended up winning the female side of the race, which is fantastic, and congratulations to her as well. And I left that aid station just thinking, got to conserve water because you're going to run out at some point, and you've just got to move efficiently. And I just remember going through some really big kind of up and down through canyons, and one of them was really black rock, and it was just hitting this black rock, and you get that kind of wavy air that you see the heat. And then I got to the shoulder of this huge frontal range, basically, of mountain. And I thought, I'll just have a look on my Gaia to see where which kind of direction are we going and where's the aid station going to be. And I could see, I'm guessing it must have been about like 10, 11 miles across the front of this range to another big mountain that had just this tiny notch on the top of it. And looking at my Gaia, I could see that the switchbacks down to the aid station were on the other side of that notch. I'm like, okay, we're going there. And I just made that conscious decision. I'm like, it's hot, it's going to suck, but you're just going to have to run as much of this as you possibly can, and just hike when it gets too much. So I don't know how, but like for some reason, I was just able to move really, really effectively through that frontal range. Hit the notch, then I'm looking at these switchbacks thinking it's just going to be like European switchbacks where you're just like, 10 meters switchback, 10 meters switchback all the way down. It wasn't. They were big, like 400-meter kind of gap switchbacks. Ran out of water there. There were lots of dead cow skulls littering the floor. I'm thinking, these cows are coming up here and dying, but I ain't dying today. Not today, Satan. So I ran out of water, just coming to the aid, probably about 3 miles from the aid station, got in there, and yeah, my wife and my crew, Jake and Tina, did a fantastic job in kind of just cooling me down, get me some Sprite, some ice cream. By the way, my top tip, and this is purely anecdotal, Scott Jenkins, ice cream in hot races is the one. Calorific, slides down, pulls the insides. Like it's
Yeah.
for me, I personally find it's fantastic. Couple that with some Vespa, which a company I'm very much sponsored by,
Yeah.
which is really cool. And I just kind of took all that in at the aid station. I knew that there were people in and around me, and I just had to get moving. And that was the first time for the last 16 miles that I had a pacer for the whole race. And there was a realization leaving that aid station that the race for top 10 was very much alive and well, and just felt very for by reasonable standards, I felt pretty good at like mile 290 of this 300 odd mile race, and just kept trying to put the work in, staying hungry for the work, and eventually was able to kind of open a bit of a gap and a bit of a buffer around me, and hit the road for the last 3 miles. And that was probably the first point in the race where I was like, where am I? And they're like, well, we think you're in the top 10. We think you're there. I'm not sure. So just keep working. And then mile 299 was a 10:29-minute mile. It's on my Strava. If it's not on Strava, it didn't happen. And then crossed the line, and there's this really nice realization that, for so long I'd wanted to push to try and get into the top 10 of a big international race. And I said, where did I finish? And they're like, you finished in ninth. And I was like, what? I thought I was trying to get into the top 10. And it turns out that the other chap that I mentioned, Lance, we hopscotched the whole race. He'd actually started in an earlier wave, unbeknownst to me. So I managed to sneak in ninth place. And yeah, it's something that'll stick with me for the rest of my life, I think.
Nice. Yeah. I didn't realize it started in waves then. Was there a few waves, or was it just a couple, or
Four waves.
four waves?
So I remember the 11 o'clock wave going off and seeing it on Instagram, and I'm thinking, they, they got a 3 hour head start here. I'm still in the hotel putting my tape on my feet. I'm like watching it thinking, that's going to be me in 3 hours time. And then trying to like get back into the zone of like, get your kit ready. Come on, stupid. We need to, we need to focus here. So yeah, they did it in waves. I think it was due to the permitting, and there was over 300 people that started the race. So it kind of made sense because you're going to hit the trail and everything's going to turn into one big conga line. So yeah, it's fortunate to start in the competitive wave. I think it was a 2 p.m. kickoff, and yeah, got out of there and just straight into the Sufferfest basically.
Amazing. It's funny how when you talk about, having like moments where you feel like you can push in a race, like when you were talking about running towards that mountain with the notching and stuff, where the aid station was. And how many days in was that into the race? Was that like 3 days in, 4 days in?
That would have been, I mean, it's the penultimate stage. So it's literally on the last day of the race. So I started on the Friday afternoon. This was Tuesday, like morning, afternoon, basically. So I believe, and people feel free to fact check me, but it would have been around mile 260-ish. We are doing this 22, 23 mile section. And yeah,
It's
looking
crazy.
back at it now, it seems it's crazy. I mean, the other thing that I've just blown away and I still can't comprehend it is I looked at my watch at mile 205 and I looked down and I was like, oh my God, I've just set my own PB in a 300-mile race. I've just set a 200-mile PB of 69 hours for 200 miles. And I'm like, wow, like what have I been doing in those other races? Because now I'm at 205 and sometimes I'm like, well, most of the time I'm in around like late 70s to 80 hours on a 200. And I'm like, okay, so now I know that I've got more to give in these races, which is kind of like opens up another level, right? You're like, okay, and now I know what I can do if I put the work in.
Do you think that's a result of because you knew it was a longer race, you came at it sort of more reserved in the beginning, and that gave you something later on? Do you think that's what that that your normal approach would have been sort of to sort of hit it a bit quicker and then slow down yeah, can you sort of follow me on that, the reasoning on that then?
Yeah, yeah. It's a good question, Sam, actually, and I haven't really dissected it properly. But thinking about it now, I think it's actually a case of the old Brailsford marginal gains a little bit. So got my sleep strategy right, got my hydration and salts right, got my food right, um, moved efficiently, didn't spend much time in the aid stations, and I think all of those incremental kind of 0.5% gains added up to taking 10 hours off my best time for a 200 miler. Um, Also, I think to your point, there's an element there of like you're going 300 miles, so it doesn't really matter what happens in mile 100 or mile 200. It matters where you are at 300. And I think I hadn't really looked at my watch to go, oh, you're at mile X. I'd only ever looked at my watch to pretty much on the bike path before then to look to see, oh, 11 minute, do it again, 11 minute, do it again, do it again. And I hadn't really comprehended the distance until that point. I was like, oh, okay, you're doing all right, I guess.
Yeah. It's a great result, isn't it, to being the top 10 in such a high profile like inaugural race of such a absolute beast. Well, a monster of a race. Yeah, 300. So yeah,
Well,
you
thank you.
must be pretty chuffed with it.
Thank you so much, Sam. That's really kind of you to say, mate. And like I say, I wanted to get into the top 10 for so long and, 14th, 14th, 15th, always in that ballpark. And yeah, I know it doesn't really mean much to anyone else, but to me, it was a personal goal that I'd always wanted to achieve. And when we accomplish something that we've worked so long for, so hard for, I guess, yeah, it's nice to reflect on. But as with all these things, you kind of certainly my mindset is you kind of do it, and then you're like, what should I do next, kind of thing. And one thing I'm very conscious of is like just trying to take the time to reflect on it a little bit and enjoy it. And I haven't really done that yet. Not to kind of dine out on it, just to kind of think to yourself, well, you've accomplished what you wanted to achieve there, and now you need to set a new goal, I suppose.
Yeah.
Don't know what that is yet. I'm working on
Um, yeah, that was going to be one of my questions of what is next. But if you're yeah, you're quite right. Sometimes we do these things, we do these big races, and we don't give it as because being an ultra running is kind of a humbling thing anyway, isn't it? It humbles you, doesn't it, when you're an ultra runner because
definitely.
how hard it is. So sometimes you can sort of be a bit humble about appreciating what you've actually achieved sometimes. So if your average person went and ran a 300-mile race, literally everybody in their life would know about it, and they would just tell everybody every day what they've done. But because you're sort of in that world of super long races, you can almost play it down a little bit, can't you, to yourself, and just go, oh yeah, it was a long race. I enjoyed it, sort of thing. So I think
Yeah.
you're quite right that sometimes you not to dine out on it, but at least give yourself credit for doing something amazing that the average person wouldn't even sort of dream about doing.
Thanks, Sam. I think that's a really, really kind of you to say that. And yeah, like you say, it's not to dine out on it. It's not to give any kind of outward thing, but just to sit here myself and maybe listen to a bit of music, have a whiskey, and look at some of the photos and videos
Yeah.
and go, yeah, that was fun. That was a big adventure.
Try and
Learned a
remember.
lot, and then yeah. I mean, to be honest with you, mate, like I have, and I said this earlier, like I've really struggled to kind of comprehend it all and put it all into perspective and kind of piece it together section by section and actually take the time to enjoy it. I've got loads of photos and loads of videos, and I've only done one Instagram post on the race itself because I can't really find the words to explain how I feel, but also the gratitude to, again, like my crew, to the race org, to the volunteers. Can't find the right words to put it into yet, but I will. It's just a matter of maybe taking the time to reflect, for sure.
Yeah, yeah, so yeah, I think photos and videos, as much as sometimes, when you're in the thick of a race and you like, don't, I can't be bothered to even get my phone out to take a video or take a photo. But you're probably the same, that over the years I've kind of learned that to kind of force myself to do it, so that even if you don't
Hmm.
use it for like social media, just to be able to sort of have it in a folder, little album of a race, and just go into it and have a look at those photos and have a look at those videos. And I don't know about you, but there's certain videos of races where I can sort of watch it and I'm instantly back in that race again. I'm instantly there and I can remember exactly how I felt and exactly what I was doing, especially if it's just sort of some rambling rubbish when I'm like hallucinating or something. I always, I've grown accustomed to hallucinating in races, and I really like it, weirdly. So I like to take videos of hallucinations that make no
What's
sense at
going
all.
on?
They make no sense afterwards, but it almost like takes you back to that moment, and maybe that's the thing to do, is to sort of film as much of it as possible. And I mean, there's other people that film a lot more. So Andy Glaze, obviously, he's well known for videoing and taking photos into and a lot. And yeah, he was putting videos on all the time, wasn't he? What's your sort of take on that kind of thing? Do you sort of just take some videos for yourself, or more personal, or are you happy to sort of put stuff out there in a race?
It's really nice to see other people's footage. Actually, I enjoy seeing that, and it's nice because Andrew does a great job in like documenting his adventures. And actually, like sometimes you watch them back and you're like, oh yeah, I remember that. It's really cool. It's nice to see. And yeah, maybe that does the work for me in a way because then I don't need to take my phone out. But I'm exactly the same. Like I wish I was good at documenting it in the way that they are. And actually, if I kind of had one, not regret, but one thing I would change about ultra running for the last 15 years for me personally is that I wish I'd kind of taken the time to document it more widely on like channels like YouTube or with the videos. I'm just terrible at it. I'm not great. Most of my videos or photos I like taking, so I enjoy taking photos, whether that's photos of runners or whether it's photos of scenery. I enjoy that because I can see it and I'm like, oh, that's beautiful. I need to take a photo of that. Videos I don't really like doing because I'm like, oh, nobody wants to listen to this old dog talk about marching up a hill in the middle of the race. But actually, weirdly, they kind of
They
do. So
do, yeah, they
I'm
do.
kind of I regret not capturing more of the crazy adventures that I've had. But I think it's great to see people out there kind of capturing that content. And selfishly, from my perspective, it means that I can watch it and be like, oh yeah, that's amazing. I remember that bit. That's really cool. So yeah, it's good to see. I like it.
Yeah, brilliant. Awesome. So finally then, what is next? Have you sort of contemplated where you're going to go? Obviously, you're reflecting on this great achievement, but um as ultra runners, we're always thinking about the next thing, aren't we? Even if it's just like a little bit of an inkling about something you want to do. So what have you sort of thought about what could possibly happen for the rest of this year then?
Weirdly, I've kind of got this massive gap now between the Monster and the Kodiak 100 in California in October, which was a rollover from the year before. In an ideal world, I'd love to be racing in Moab this year, but I'm not going to be doing that. I know next year that I intend to do Cocodona and Moab. Those are the two races that I've already kind of got circled in, and I'll do my annual prayer to the gods for Western states, which probably won't happen, but at least I'll have something exciting to look forward to with the live stream in December. And then immediately go, oh, for God's sake, another year, another 64 tickets or whatever it is. One day. But in terms of like this summer, I'm going to do the soft rock in Colorado, which would be cool. And then I do actually want to spend more time running in Colorado. Like some of those mountains are just enormous, and I want to experience a little bit more of that. So there is a race called the Summit 200, which I've been toying with the idea of doing. But I'm also, because my wife Abby, who's also my crew chief and long suffering in that regard, mentioned it to me, and I was like, well, I'll look at it, but I'm not going to look at it for at least another week so that I can enjoy this one a little bit and then think about, okay, am I going to do that? So that would be what I'd like to do potentially.
Yeah, awesome. That's so good to hear. Well,
Thanks,
appreciate you
man.
coming on and sort of giving us the lowdown, and it was great to sort of get an insight on the race from someone who's done it, and obviously someone who can, my listeners can sort of relate to as a fellow Brit.
Thank you.
So it's great to kind of see your sort of insights on what actually happened in the race, and obviously you'd recommend it for anyone, wouldn't you, for the future?
100%. I think it's a life-changing adventure, and like many of their races are for Destination Trail, just a great opportunity to go out into some beautiful scenery, have an adventure, and learn a little bit about yourself. And maybe that's what ultra running is all about at the end of the day, is it not?
That's it. Yeah, finding yourself, losing yourself, hallucinating.
Yeah, but also taking those lessons back into day-to-day life, I think, as well. Like so many times when you're faced with difficult situations in races, when you're later faced with a difficult situation, perhaps in day-to-day, like maybe you got to do a big presentation or XYZ, you can use those experiences from big ultra races to go, well, maybe doing this presentation isn't as scary as running 135 miles across Death Valley in 52 degrees heat.
Yeah,
Put it
exactly.
into perspective a little bit.
There's always something harder out there to do, and
Yes, sir.
if there is, we'll be signing up for it.
Exactly. Take my money. Take my money.
Amazing. Thanks for coming on, Scott. I
Thank
appreciate
you, Sam.
you coming on and
My pleasure.
giving an update on what you've been up to, and keep in touch. And I'm sure we'll have you on again as a regular contributor to the podcast. So thanks for your time, mate.
Thank you for the opportunity to come back on, Sam. It's always a pleasure chatting to yourself, mate. Appreciate it.
Awesome. Brilliant. Cheers, mate. Thanks for listening, everyone.
See you,
Bye
mate.
bye 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 bye.
Okay.